The next bill on the calendar for today is House File 2828. It is a Representative Hussein bill. So I will move to lay over House File 2828. And I do believe, Representative Hussein, that you have an A1 amendment, and it looks like that it just changes the effective date from 2023 to 2024. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, I will move the A1 amendment to get the bill in the shape you desire. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The A1 amendment is adopted. And now your bill as amended is before us. Representative Hussein, please explain your bill.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Miller and member of committee. Today I have privilege to present House File 2828, a bill that will enable local governmental unity around the state to restrict or, if they see fit, prohibit possession of dangerous weapons, public land, and public buildings. When it comes to gun violence, local law serves the important purpose of addressing the unique issue and danger facing each community. My community in St. Paul and Ramsey County is no different. Our local leaders and law enforcement personally know what needs to be done to save life, and this bill will give them the authority to make such a decision. The reality is very few states that generally allow local unities to have their own gun safety policies. Here in Minnesota, we take very serious the idea of giving control over important policy to stakeholders and officials on ground. The leaders in Ramsey County community and St. Paul might make a decision that will keep children and families safe. The research is clear common sense. Gun law works, and American people are demanding that we do something to save our community and our family. Gun violence kills every year 40,000 Americans every year, and there's something need to be done, and we can do that today. This bill will save every life, but even the tragedy can prevent. It's one step ahead. So one comment that I would like to share with my colleagues, in June 24, 2008, Morrison County Government Center, there was some person showed up with gun and had a hostage for county commissioners for 8 hours. And we cannot allow that in our state. We want to make sure that our local government feel safe and work in that environment. And that's all we're asking. And this came from my city and the county asking for authority, this bill to prevent, so they can have opportunity to restrain the gun law that they deserve.
Thank you. And I believe you have 4 testifiers, and I'm assuming this first testifier is Brooke Blakey.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning. Please introduce yourself and begin. And actually, the mic looks like you might need to pull that closer. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Chair Molnar, Public Safety Committee. My name is Brooke Blakey, and I'm the Director for the Office of Neighborhood Safety for the City of St. Paul. Previously, I was a law enforcement officer with the Metro Transit Police Department, and I personally have been impacted by gun violence. I'm here today to support House File 2828, as well as share my support with House File 3672, which you will hear after this bill. As the Director of Office of Neighborhood Safety for the City of St. Paul, reduction and elimination of gun violence in my city is the main tenet of the work I do in my office. Simply put, gun violence is community violence, and it's well known that no city has been successful in arresting or prosecuting their way out of this problem. But what we have known is the City of St. Paul has engaged in the most comprehensive public safety strategy, which includes working with our rec centers, our libraries, and any other community space in which our children feel the need to be free and safe. I think really what is true about this bill is it offers the opportunity for us as local government to control the ban of firearms in the government-owned and leased land, and will aid in the ground-up, community-based public safety approach that we have been enduring. Small things like committing never to bring firearms in a rec center or library with children, similar to committing to never bring weapons and ammunition into schools and daycares, show this will and the ability to build important relationships with community and the public safety personnel, in which I proudly served as well. Having this authority and commitments for local government paired with actions from every corner of the city, for every employee to every resident, visitor, and business owner will help the efforts of addressing and reducing gun-related violence in our communities. Now, perhaps more than ever, as we continue to address compounded crisis and enduring trauma far too many of our neighbors face, our Office of Neighborhood Safety stands to further usher our neighbors from crisis to wellness, and with it, transformational outcomes from every corner of our city. While there is much work to be done to realize the evolving body of work, our community members remain united to support this vision, which we'll continue cultivating together. I urge you to support House File 2828, along with the next bill you hear from Representative Pinto, House File 73672. I thank you for your time and know that our goal is to keep every child and every resident in our community safe in the places that they feel safe in. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Next up, we have Andy Rodriguez, and then the next testifier will be Mark McCabe. So if you want to work your way down towards the table too, that would be great. Welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself and begin your testimony.
Good morning, Chair Moeller and Public Safety Committee members. My name is Andy Rodriguez. I am the Director of the City of St. Paul's Parks and Recreation Department, which is nationally recognized as one of the top park systems in the country, with over 185 parks and 26 community recreation centers. Before becoming director, I managed the recreation center system within St. Paul, and I have a strong passion and understanding for what these facilities mean to youth and families across our communities. On behalf of the City of St. Paul and my department, I'm here to express our strong support of House File 2828, a bill to authorize local governmental units to decide whether to prohibit the possession of firearms and explosives in local government-owned or leased buildings and land. During nearly every hour that our facilities are open, there are children, teens, and families building skills, connecting with peers, recreating with families, and so much more. Safe, supportive spaces where our youth can connect around common interests with peers and positive role models alike are critical to the future of our city, and we will not tolerate any endangerment of those who trust us to keep them safe in these spaces. Because of the deeply accessible nature of our spaces, we don't turn anyone away from our services. The challenges that are present in our communities today also come into our public spaces, including our rec centers. As our state experiences increases in mental health challenges, substance use disorder, unhoused neighbors, and gun violence, these challenges are also present in those facilities. Unlike private, non-governmental establishments, which can regulate the carrying of firearms in their spaces, there's no authority for a local government unit to ban firearms from being carried into those local government-owned or leased buildings and land. Other governmental facilities, including most notably schools, have provisions in state law that permit them to ban dangerous weapons while knowingly on school property. Letting local governments have the local control and ability to ban firearms in government-owned and leased buildings like our recreation centers will be a critical step in helping to prevent gun violence within our communities. I urge you to support this bill, along with the next bill you will hear from Representative Pinto, House File 3672, to ensure that we protect our children and families and the staff that work tirelessly to keep our communities safe. Thank you.
Thanks for your testimony, Director. Next up, we have Director Mark McCabe, and then on deck is Deputy Director Peng Yang, if you want to work your way down as well. Welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself and begin your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Mark McCabe, and I'm the Director of Parks and Recreation for Ramsey County. I'm here today to voice the county's support for Representative Hussein's bill, House File 2828. We appreciate that this bill and the following bill from Representative Pinto gives local governments the ability to control whether or not firearms can be brought into their parks and other facilities. There have been various issues within Ramsey County Parks and related facilities regarding firearms. One that I'd like to just reference and point out, in September of 2020, a father of a youth hockey player brought an assault rifle into the TCO Sports Garden arena facility in Vadnais Heights during a hockey game. And this obviously caused significant alarm, worry, and panic among youth, parents, and staff. Fortunately, there was not an act of violence, but it was very traumatic to an arena full of attendees. People still talk about that event. There's still fallout from it. These spaces need to be safe and free of firearms so that everyone can enjoy these community facilities, that they can be safe. And again, places where our community can come together and do what they intended to do in coming into these facilities. So thank you again for introducing this bill. I'll turn things over to my colleague, Pang Yang, to share a few words as well.
Thank you, Director. Next, we have Deputy Director Peng Yang. Welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself and begin your testimony.
Hello, thank you. For the record, my name is Peng Yang, and I'm the Deputy Director of the Ramsey County Library. Like our recreation facilities and my colleagues here, libraries are havens and places of learning in our community. In 2022, 13.5 million people visited libraries across the state. A significant group of people who visit our libraries are youth and children. While guns are not currently permitted in our schools when the school day ends and our kids disperse to join programs and services offered in our libraries, at that point, their protection ends. What happens in our communities happens in our libraries. This includes fun, learning, connection, and also, unfortunately, substance use, mental health crises, and exposure to violence. In my years of service to the public and libraries, in the St. Paul Public Library, and also in Ramsey County Library, I myself have seen people walk in with crossbows, with knives of varying sizes. And my colleagues across the state have had to engage with people with guns placed on public computer tables in views of others and in potentially dangerous situations. I recall vividly engaging with my colleague right after he had to call emergency personnel for someone who was shot in his back before he walked into a library. By giving local governments the ability to decide if they wish to ban weapons in their facilities, we give each community the opportunity to have a conversation about when and where guns are appropriate in the lives of our children and our community. Libraries are community social infrastructure. They are places to connect, to learn, experience joy, to find jobs and resources, to start their businesses, and also simply exist. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to speak in support of this bill today, and we are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Deputy Director. We did have a few people sign up in advance, and so if I haven't called your name, I'd like you to not be sitting behind the testifiers table right now. If you can please move back to the audience. All right. Will I get a chance to speak? I will decide what's going on here with the testifiers. We've got several people who signed up in advance. The first person is Linnea Palmisano. And then next on the list is Rob Dorr. All right, council member, welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself and begin your testimony.
Good morning. My name is Linnea Palmisano, and I'm here in my official capacity as the 13th Ward City Council member for Minneapolis. Thank you for allowing me to provide testimony on this bill this morning, Madam Chair. The City of Minneapolis supports House File 2828 and thanks Representative Hussein for bringing forward and carrying this bill. The City of Minneapolis legislative priorities support local authority as well as gun violence prevention measures. In my personal capacity, I see you here at your dais, and it reminds me of the several times per week that I sit on the council dais in Minneapolis. I am proud to serve my community, and I do so with no trepidation, but I also admit there have been times that I've been concerned for my safety, the safety of my colleagues, and most importantly, the safety of the community in attendance. I'm concerned about this safety because we don't have the legal right to prohibit guns at government facilities in Minneapolis. There has been a swift and large increase of contentious public meetings at many levels of government, county, school board, and city. I embrace and support everyone's right to attend public meetings, but that participation needs to be done safely with more limits on the ability to bring in firearms. I respect these regulations may vary greatly between communities or municipalities, but I strongly support allowing each entity to make those decisions for themselves and not be limited by state statute. I think about why weapons are not allowed and carefully controlled in courtrooms. It's because these situations can be clearly upsetting to people. It's about their family, loved ones, and those in charge can remove freedoms and determine an individual's rights. Very similarly, though, we enact laws, enforce laws, deny appeals by individuals and businesses alike. Whether it's a local issue or a foreign national policy, we have people showing up and packing City Hall because we are doing work very nearby. We're not in Washington or across the state. We're right down the street, just like every city has a city hall. I fear that we've had real world.
Councilmember, we didn't start the clock on time, and so I don't know how much time you have left. My apologies, but you were given 2 minutes. I know you're over 2 minutes, so if you could please wrap up your testimony.
Sure. I welcome the public to City Hall, and I think they do so assuming we've made safe public spaces for them. In today's world, most people would expect you can't be in these spaces in an uncontrolled way. So giving us the ability to regulate that could help us finally meet that expectation. Thank you.
Thanks for your testimony. Rob Dorr, you are up next, and then Craig Burris is on deck. Welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself and begin your testimony.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, I'm Rob Dorr. I'm the Vice President of the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus. We're opposed to this bill today. I want to be really clear who we're talking about here. This bill affects permit to carry holders. It's already illegal for people to carry firearms in public places unless they have a permit to carry. So everything that we've heard about concerns, the only people impacted by this bill are people who have a Minnesota permit to carry. That's it, because everyone else is already breaking the law. When there are shootings that have happened in St. Paul rec centers, it wasn't a permit to carry holder. It was a St. Paul city employee that who was already prohibited by city policy from carrying firearms. So when we're looking at this bill, there is only one small group of people that are targeted, and it was invoked about the ability to carry firearms in public places or in private businesses. The remedy for that is a warning and a request to exit. The penalty in here is an immediate crime, up to 30 days in jail and a $1,000 fine. It's a very stark penalty for somebody who is in every other aspect of life lawfully carrying. And there's one other aspect of this I want to bring up. I've heard our friends on the law enforcement side testify many times about how firearms stolen from vehicles is a major source of crime. Now, what we're asking here is people who are engaging in the civic process, who have every right to carry in every other walk of life as they're in the public community, to now have to go put their firearms in their vehicles. I think this exasperates the very thing that we're trying to prevent, is actually guns getting into the hands of the wrong people, not guns in the hands of people who have been trained, certified, background checked every single year. Thank you.
Thanks for your testimony. Next, we have Craig Burris, and on deck, we have Mercedes Ceres Ybarro. Welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself and begin your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. My name is Craig Burris. I live in Lakeville. I've been a permit to carry instructor for over 15 years, and I developed and taught the first college-level women's self-defense course in Minnesota that allowed women to learn about personal safety while getting college credit. I'm here today to oppose House File 2828. By allowing each locality to determine their own rules about what government buildings and land are legal to carry in, you would be creating a patchwork of rules that has no effect other than to stifle our right to self-defense and entrap law-abiding permit to carry licensees into breaking the law. There is no basis for the change in these laws. Since the inception of the Minnesota Citizens Personal Protection Act, licensed permit to carry holders have proven to be the most law-abiding of all Minnesotans. Additionally, you would be inadvertently giving criminals more access to guns. Every time someone with a permit to carry needs to enter a prohibited area, they need to secure their firearm, usually in a vehicle. The security lock boxes that fit in vehicles are suspect at best. Most can be opened with a screwdriver in under 5 seconds. In the past 30 days, I've been in multiple city and county parks, DMVs, libraries, and the Lakeville City Hall. Imagine if I had to look up the law for each city and county to know if I could legally enter a park, city building, or county property. It seems like this change to our law can only have one goal: to stop law-abiding Minnesotans with a permit to carry from actually carrying their firearm for fear of breaking the law. This will do nothing to stop crime, as we already know criminals don't obey gun laws. I, like the nearly 400,000 other Minnesotans who have a permit to carry, are not the people that you need to worry about. Hopefully you all read the report from Minnesota's Sentencing Guidelines Commission, who recently reported to the legislature. This report stated that 40% of convicted gun crimes in Minnesota didn't even get the minimum mandatory sentence. With numbers like that, it's hard to believe that we're even having to discuss limiting the rights of law-abiding citizens. I urge you to oppose HF 2828, stop trying to put onerous regulations on law-abiding citizens, and instead focus your efforts on the criminals who are committing the crimes. Thank you.
Thanks for your testimony. And the last testifier that we had signed up is Mercedes Ceres Ybarro. Welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself and begin your testimony.
Hi, my name is Mercedes Yarbrough, and I'm writing to share my testimony regarding HF2828. Thank you, Representative Hassan. Last year, my family experienced a devastating tragedy due to gun violence involving a St. Paul City Parks and Rec worker. My younger brother, who was only 16, fell victim to this senseless act of violence when he was shot in the head by the parks worker, who was also a license to carry. He was over the age of 26 years old at the time. This incident serves as a stark reminder of the dangers posed by individuals in possessions of power who misuse firearms. It highlights the grave consequences of poor judgment and the misuse of authority, particularly when firearms are involved. The parks workers' actions exemplify how some individuals, even those entrusted with public service roles, may abuse their authority and use firearms not for protection, but to assert dominance and control over others. Not approving HF2828, in my opinion, would only exacerbate the risk associated with gun violence. Granting individuals the authority to carry firearms without proper oversight and accountability measures could empower them to wield their weapons as tools of intimidation and coercion rather than a genuine protection. I implore you to consider the potential ramifications of this bill and the implications it may have for public safety, the well-being of our communities. Rather than fostering a sense of security, it should protect our community and create an environment where power dynamics and fear won't be an issue. In conclusion, I urge you to approve HF2828 and let us work together to promote policies that prioritize the safety and security of all individuals without compromising the fundamental principles of accountability and responsibility. Thank you attention for this matter. And just on a side note, I'd like you guys to pay attention to who's on the stands and who's it affecting. The ones who are opposed to it look a certain way, and that's no question why. It's the communities and people of color who are being affected by gun violence the most. Our kids are the ones affected. Protect the kids.
Thanks for your testimony. We're going to move on now to member discussion, and Representative Hollins. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Representative Hussein, for bringing this bill forward. And thank you for the testifiers. I think it's a very interesting conversation. I do support this bill for a number of reasons, but one in particular I want to bring up is in my district, at an elementary school in my district, there was actually a gentleman who had a license to carry, brought a gun in, and was playing basketball with a group of students in after school, and the gun went off and shot him in the foot. And he was charged because it was a school and because you're not allowed to bring guns into schools. But the reality is a lot of people go and play basketball at rec centers. I have several rec centers in my district, and the thought that my kids could be in these rec centers playing basketball, minding their own business while somebody's gun goes off in their pocket, you know, and I know he meant no ill will, right? I know that he was just a parent of a student that was there. But the reality is these are dangerous weapons. And if we can't send our kids into public facilities and assume that they're going to be safe, that's really a problem. The other thing I noted, and I guess I don't really have a question as much as I want to note that on line 1.11, it says a local government unit may prohibit or restrict. So really, this is a local control bill. This is about saying if your municipality wants to do something like this, they are allowed to. And if they don't want to do something like this, they don't have to. And I understand that because I grew up in a small rural area where there's not a lot of people. And now I live in a major municipality. And it's like a vast difference how many people you run into when I live in the city of St. Paul versus where I grew up. You know, I knew basically everybody that I was around. I interacted with them. Yes, there were lots of lawful gun owners in the areas where I grew up because it was very rural. And but it just wasn't the same interactions that we have now in a major municipal city. And so for that reason, I really appreciate this, because this is giving control back to local governments and saying, if this is something that you don't want to see happen, then put something in place to stop it. And if it's something that you don't care about and it works well for your community, then you don't have to do it. So thank you for bringing this forward. I'm very excited by this.
Representative Mueller.
Thank you, Chair Mueller. And I have a question before I have a comment, and it's kind of a question to whoever can answer it. Can a business, a church, or whatever, a public space, what's the process of going and getting a sign that says this is a gun-free zone? Like, is there hoops to go through? I mean, can you just put up a sign that says it's a gun-free zone? Is there anyone that can answer that for me?
We'll call on Mr. Johnson to answer that.
Madam Chair, members, yes, there is. It's in statute. It's section 624 and it's subdivision 17, 624.714, excuse me, subdivision 17. I'm not going to review the whole thing, but it does not require any specific hoops. You don't have to get approval, but there are very specific requirements related to the sign, what it needs to look like, the size, and those sorts of things.
Representative Mueller.
Thank you, Chair Mueller, and thank you, Ben Johnson, for that. It seems as if we actually already have the tools necessary for what you're trying to do in this bill, Representative Hussain. I really wanted to focus, I mean, we've been on committee now for a long time, Chair Mueller, and you know we've listened to many of these bills, and I rarely speak to them because I don't have the same background as a lot of other people do. But I've been in classes, and I've been in school, and I've been a teacher for a long time. And I've talked a long time about how this is this type of a culture of violence, and this culture of that legislating out of this is never going to happen. But one of the testifiers said that someone brought a gun to a hockey game, and though nothing happened, it was traumatic for everyone, and we need to prevent that from ever happening again. This isn't about an act of someone breaking a law. This is about the perception of someone who wants to carry a gun. This is the perception of that, the perception of what could happen, the perception of someone who has already followed the law, but oh my goodness, here's a scary thing that's happened and that I'm traumatized by this. And while that trauma may be real, the truth is that this law or this bill that you're trying to do, Representative Hussain, isn't going to affect what you're hoping to affect. It's about the perception of guns. It's already illegal to carry a gun when you don't have a permit to carry. It's already illegal. And it's already illegal to bring a gun to a gun-free zone like a school. It's already illegal I had a friend who was a permit to carry, and she was a strong gun advocate, and we were at a hotel, and she goes, oh gosh, this is a gun-free zone. I have to leave this because I'm not, and the penalties for that are severe. This bill, Representative Hussain, is not about local control. This is about making people who are following the law, and people are scared of that, and making that perception now criminal. And I just think that this is something we need to really have good conversations about, because, man, we already have the tools available to prevent a lot of gun violence with many of the laws that we have that we should actually enforce, with many of the signs that you can put on buildings, and with having education. All of those things are already available to us. So why we would have a bill that would criminalize people who are already trying to follow the law just to squash the perception that guns are scary? I feel very strongly that while I rarely talk about gun bills because I don't have that background, this one feels like it's a a step too far. So thank you so much.
Yep, and just to correct the record here, the local governments don't have the ability to put signs up or the tools. That's what this bill would allow. And maybe Mr. Johnson could speak to the signage requirements and what those can apply to.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't complete the answer, I guess. The places that were mentioned were all private entities. The ability to ban guns in 624.714 does only apply to private businesses. It does not apply to government buildings. The prohibitions on carrying in schools and carrying in courthouses is in 609.66, which is the statute being amended in this bill.
Next, we have Representative Curran.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Rep. Hussein, for bringing this forward. I just first wanted to note that one of the examples provided in testimony today happened in my community. And, you know, while I understand the argument of perception, you know, I just have to counter that with, as a gun owner and as somebody who enjoys shooting as a sport and going to a safe range and using them in a safe manner, and someone who has had a carry permit and carried my gun when I felt it was necessary, perception, it's an interesting thing to talk about because guns are used to kill living things. So I'm really curious what other perception there is to have when an adult brings a rifle to a hockey game. I just, why wouldn't you be fearful of that? Why would you not be fearful? Why are you bringing a rifle to a hockey? What is happening here? Like, what should the perception be? And, you know, I do have to disagree. There was a comment that this bill is directed at carry permit holders. I disagree. I outright disagree with that. I believe that this bill is directed at combating gun violence as the leading cause of death among children. I find it really difficult to swallow that every time this conversation comes up, we're just really concerned about being able to keep our guns and bring them wherever we want to, and just completely ignoring the reality of what's happening to children in our country. I find that appalling, and I say that as somebody, again, who enjoys using guns in a safe way, and we still have the right to do that, and I still believe in our Second Amendment rights to do that. But we have a problem, and we have kids dying. And I'll just lastly say that I also find it interesting that we're talking about educating people and keeping children educated about guns. And then, you know, when we talk about other things, it seems like we're trying to keep them in the dark about just about everything else. But man, they should really learn about guns. And I just have a really tough time with that argument as well. So thank you for this. Our communities do need to have the ability to protect public spaces. And this is something that I would like to see in my community too. So thank you.
All right, and we have multiple members on the list still. We still have two more bills. So we'll keep moving here. Representative Hudson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll try to keep that in mind and be as concise as I can be. I do have a question for nonpartisan staff, Mr. Johnson. Under the current law, a private establishment can ban guns. What is the effect of that ban on an individual? So if I have a permit to carry, I walk into a store that has a sign that says guns are banned in this facility. What is the process that that store owner, establishment owner can go through to redress my violation?
Mr. Johnson, if you can answer that.
Madam Chair, Representative Hudson. So there are, in 624714, there are a few different provisions, and I just want to make sure I'm getting the language up. But the owner can directly ask the person to leave. That is always one option. The other option is to post the sign that I mentioned, which is in subdivision 17 of that particular statute. Refusing to leave or bringing a gun in without, you know, paying attention to that sign is an offense, and I am trying to find the specific penalty so that I don't say it incorrectly.
My memory, that might be a petty, but I'm not quite sure.
I
I don't know if
believe
anybody
that's
knows.
correct as
Okay.
well, but
Okay.
I
Not
wanted
sure
to
if
be
anybody knows that.
I'm going to keep looking, and
Okay.
I can supplement as
All right,
needed.
go ahead. Representative Hudson.
Thank you. That's adequate to make the point that I'd like to make, which is if you had a bill that said that city buildings, public buildings, could follow that process, where they can put up signs and you're dealing with a petty, maybe you get a citation, I might be able to go along with it. But what we're seeing here is a scenario where we're ignoring the fact. I mean, Representative Curran brings up the fact that guns are designed to kill living things. Indeed, sometimes those living things are trying to kill you, which is why people like to have guns, because they want to be able to protect themselves and the people around them, the public at large, their family, what have you. And so that recognizing that essential difference, and this seems to be a recurring problem in our discussions, where we fail to acknowledge the distinction between people who act in bad faith with malice and people who are acting in good faith, trying to be law-abiding individuals. Those two categories of people you're not going to have the same type of interaction with them. And so the establishment owner who has to approach somebody who either knowingly or unknowingly violated their ban on firearms, when they ask them to leave, that's when you're going to find out in that moment whether they're a good actor or a bad actor. And past that point, the response is going to be the same. If they're a bad actor, things are going to go sideways. This bill does not change that. If they're a bad actor, things are still going to go sideways. The only thing this bill changes is that if they're acting in good faith and they're otherwise law-abiding, they're guilty of a misdemeanor and they're going to go to jail. That's why I can't get behind this.
Representative Ingen.
Thank you, Chair Moeller. And thank you, Representative Hussein, for bringing it forward. I do think that you have good intentions. I think that you want to see less gun violence. Now, I think we've heard 6 or 7 gun bills in this committee, ranging back to last year. But using Representative Curran's own words, ignoring the reality of what's happening in our community. Well, according to the Sentencing Guidelines Commission data in 2023, there's a record number of cases involving gun violence, 1,805 offense committed with a firearm. Only 30% of those cases ended in a conviction with a mandatory minimum sentence. 48% of those cases were either not charged, dismissed, or the mandatory minimum sentence was waived. That's the real issue that we're not addressing in this committee. That's the real reality of what's happening in our communities that we're not getting at. So while we sit here and we want to pretend that we're going to actually make our spaces safer with laws like this, it's not getting at the actual heart of the issue. In fact, I actually saw somebody on the other side of the table here that had a bill that's going to waive the mandatory minimums for gun violence. So I don't want to hear about this one-sided monopoly on compassion regarding gun violence that one side of the aisle continues to drumbeat over the other when it's not getting at the heart of the issue. This is another one of those bills. Thank you.
Representative Frazier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Ingen, I was not going to talk about mandatory minimums, but now you've cited my bill. Yeah. It is my bill. Yep. And it doesn't waive mandatory minimums. It gives discretions back to prosecutors. And in these cases that you keep mentioning, I haven't heard anybody mention the details of why those cases may have been dismissed or why there may have been a departure. 48%. Nobody mentioned the details of any of those cases. Details matter. In order to charge a case, you need evidence. In order to convict someone, you need evidence. Departures happen because of extenuating circumstances, mitigating circumstances. You have to talk about those details. But this bill, thank you for bringing it, Representative Hussein, this bill is about giving local governments the opportunity to protect the people that come into their public spaces. I'm a former city council member. This tool would have been great to have when I was a city council member. This tool would be great to have for other local government entities to be able to make a decision on how they want to protect the folks that come into their public spaces. So thank you for bringing this bill, and I'm looking forward to moving it forward.
Representative Novotny.
There's another one coming.
Go ahead, Representative Novotny.
Chair Moeller, I can rehash what everybody's already pointed out, but it won't do any good. But we keep hearing the same type of testimony about incidents, and in every testimony that we've had in this, and I suspect in the bills coming forward, and the ones we had last week, there's not a single case that anyone cited where what happened was allowed. We talk about, the author has the bill, mentioned the 2008 shooting in the Morrison County Courthouse. Well, that was already prohibited. Definitely the act of holding people hostage was prohibited, but just him bringing a firearm into the courthouse was prohibited. The St. Paul Park employee was already prohibited from carrying a gun, and I'm pretty sure the act that he was ultimately convicted of was prohibited. I think Representative Engen nailed it on the head when another law that we're not going to enforce on anyone other than the people that are law enforcement following or law following. It's just table magic. Table magic is important. Pay attention to this hand while this hand is the problem. We can keep going around and round and round. As Representative Engen said, there's a problem. And the concealed carry people aren't it. Making someone that is a concealed carry user less safe doesn't make you safe. Doesn't make you safer. And in fact, I would submit that restricting concealed carry from facilities makes you less safer, because in many cases, a good guy with the firearm is the solving of the problem. A good guy with the gun is so often what takes care of the bad guy with the gun. We'll keep repeating that as this goes forward if we keep hearing these bills that are anti-public safety, I feel. Like I said, you can distract and talk about the part that you don't want to talk about that's ugly. We won't talk about that. We'll talk about window dressing. It doesn't matter. Members, I urge a no vote, and I request a roll call.
I am a strong supporter of this bill, and before you close, I'm just going to make a few comments. I hear often a good guy with a gun is what stops a bad guy with a gun, and I'm thinking of the image of President Reagan being shot surrounded by security officials. We have a problem with guns in this country, and we're hearing so many gun bills in this committee because of the problem that we have with guns. Guns are the leading cause of death of children and adolescents in this country, and that's why we're hearing these bills. These are important discussions to have, and I'm glad we're having them, but just want to be clear as to why, as chair, I have decided to hear so many gun bills. Representative Hussein, closing comments.
Thank you, Chair Miller, and I appreciate it for you to give me the opportunity to testify and bring this bill forward. This is affecting my community. This is affecting my backyard, in my district, every day. And my city and the county wanted this bill because the statute that we have is not giving opportunity for them local control. And I have many dialogues, both sides, and all we talk about always is, hey, we want to give power to local governments to decide what they wanted to do with. And I would say, in library, when I'm taking my kids, I don't want people to have a gun. They should be having a pen and book and reading, not a gun. There's no in earth people have a gun in libraries. And that's one thing that we're talking about, it, that we want to give opportunity our local government to control it. Rec centers, we shouldn't be having a gun. We should be exercising, playing basketball, and do activities with families members and swimming. We shouldn't be having a gun. Gun kill people, not people kill guns. And what we is doing today and asking is just to give our local government to do the authority, because in St. Paul and Ramsey County and in our district is different than the rest of your district in greater Minnesota. You don't see this violence that we see every day. And that's why we're bringing this bill forward, because our statute is not protecting our community. Thank you.
Thanks. And Lee Navat, you requested a roll call, but we're laying this bill over. So I will renew the motion and lay over House File 2828 as amended.